Muslims, go home!
Heated, chaotic scenes erupted across the streets of Minneapolis, where fury over the fatal shooting of Renee Good by a federal immigration agent has ignited raw, combustible clashes between anti-ICE protesters and opposing demonstrators. What began as a condemnation of the killing quickly exploded into an intense showdown downtown, with activists and counter-protesters locked in shouting battles and scuffles amid downtown chaos. The city, already on edge after days of unrest and a massive federal enforcement surge, has become a volatile flashpoint of communal tension and fury, with anger and fear spilling into the streets. Footage shows an ICE supporter climbing into a city hall window well and clashing with the crowd. He can be heard screaming, "Go home, Muslims," and "White Christian men, you must stand now or you will be replaced."
For generations, white Christian men, you must stand now or you will be replaced. ICE, ICE baby, send them all back. Send every last Somali home. Send the Somalis back. Send them back.
Meanwhile, anti-ICE protesters fear that Trump might launch a coup in Minneapolis amid raging protests against his policies on immigration and crackdown by federal agents.
I'm scared because I think Donald Trump wants to use Minneapolis as a key or a hotspot to launch his coup.
I live in South Minneapolis, came here to defend our country and stand up to those who want to destroy my neighbors and abduct them from my community. I live in South Minneapolis where all this is happening, and a lot of our businesses nearby are immigrant-owned, and a lot of those businesses either have to lock their doors during the day, you have to stand there and wave to be able to go in to have lunch, or they just don't show up to work at all, and many of the businesses are struggling. But there also is a lot of businesses out here looking out for their community. A lot of businesses are stepping up, especially white-owned businesses are stepping up and looking out for their community members, offering free meals, offering all kinds of basic essentials, toilet paper, paper towels, stuff like that for our community members who can't even leave their houses. I've been here all morning. I came around 10:30, wanted to make sure I was here early. I continually work on the streets every day to protect my neighbors, and wanted to come here and just show my presence and show that I always will stand up for my neighbors and my community, and will always, always, always stand up to hate, especially for our immigrant neighbors who make our community so beautiful. The message is clear to Donald Trump. We need to get all of these forces out of Minnesota immediately. Preventing crime is not happening. This isn't working. You're making more crime in my neighborhoods and abducting my neighbors that I love so much. You need to do something now to end this misery and this rampage on Minneapolis communities. There is a lot of hope in my communities. I've seen a ton of people look out for each other, especially for our Mexican and Somali neighbors. Neighbors are going out of their way to deliver meals, to deliver groceries, to take them to appointments, and just to stand outside of schools, daycares, apartment buildings, anywhere that may be targeted by these Gestapo and these Nazi soldiers. We are standing up, and we will continue to stand up for our community and always look out for our immigrant neighbors, no matter who comes into our city. On the streets is rough. I've watched my neighbors get abducted. I've watched 12 armed, masked men get out of vehicles, surround one singular Somali man who had his driver's license, was an American citizen for years. They needed 12 masked, gunned agents to surround this man just to prove that he's a citizen. It just seems like we're in a police state, and it just seems like it's never going to end because it keeps getting worse. My neighbors won't even come out of their houses because they're so scared.
Minneapolis has been on the boil ever since a federal officer shot and killed 37-year-old Renee Good on January 7th in point-blank range. The city has been witnessing daily protests ever since. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem defended the officer involved, claiming Good had weaponized her vehicle, while Donald Trump said Good was very disorderly. Training gun on Trump, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz urged the public not to believe this propaganda machine. Meanwhile, on Monday, the state of Minnesota filed a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security, seeking to halt federal enforcement operations in the region. A federal judge has stepped directly into a street-level confrontation between protesters and the U.S. government. In Minneapolis, immigration agents sent in force are now facing strict court-ordered limits on how they can operate. The ruling lands amid deadly tension, mass deployments, and nights of unrest, and it marks a rare judicial check on federal power in real time. A U.S. federal judge in Minnesota issued a sweeping injunction curbing the tactics of immigration agents operating in Minneapolis. The order sharply restricts arrests, detentions, and the use of force against peaceful protesters and observers, marking a significant legal setback for federal authorities. U.S. District Judge Kate Menendez ruled that federal agents may not retaliate against individuals engaged in nonviolent, unobstructive protest activity. That includes people simply watching, filming, or monitoring immigration operations, unless officers have reasonable suspicion of a crime or interference. The 83-page ruling goes further. Federal officers are now barred from using pepper spray, tear gas, or other crowd control munitions against peaceful demonstrators or bystanders. The judge wrote the government failed to explain why force was necessary against people posing no threat. The injunction also limits vehicle stops. Federal agents may not stop or detain drivers or passengers unless there is reason to believe they are forcibly obstructing law enforcement. Simply following or observing immigration operations, the court said, does not justify detention. The lawsuit was filed in December, weeks before the fatal shooting of 37-year-old Renee Good by an ICE agent. The case was brought on behalf of 6 protesters and observers who said their constitutional rights were violated during immigration enforcement actions in Minneapolis. Tensions have surged since Good was shot behind the wheel of her car on January 7th. Her death ignited waves of protests and placed Minneapolis on edge, just as federal authorities expanded their presence across the region. The ruling comes amid one of the largest immigration enforcement deployments in U.S. history. Nearly 3,000 ICE and Border Patrol agents have been sent to the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, outnumbering local police and intensifying fears of militarized enforcement.